Hi everyone, this is Motion Design in Blender and I will share you my ideas, tools, tips and tricks. I am Maisam Hosaini from GCubee. At the beginning, I want to make the shape by geometry nodes. Okay, let me go to geometry nodes workspace and I select the cube and press new. Shift A to add curve primitive. I'm going to curve spiral and drag it here. As you see, I have spiral curve. I'm going to press 1 on numpad and I am going to orthographic view, and then I change some parameters of this spiral node and radius to 1 and the height to 5 meter and set the rotation to 5, or let me set it to 6 and set it to 3. Okay, or I can set it to 5. It is good. 5 and 6 or 5 and 7. Good. And now Shift A, search curve to mesh. Shift A, line, curve line. I set curve line as profile curve. Okay, I set Z and to 0 and X start -1 or -0.5, negative 0.5 and X and 2.5. It is good. Okay, let me make some room here and organize my nodes. Now I can add Shift A, another node in curve right as curve tilt, and now I can rotate my curve tilt to rotate profile of this curve. Maybe you need to add curve going to right and going to curve normal and set it here. And if you want to straight up your profile, you can set it to Z up and set this one to 19, and it is like a ribbon. And now you can rotate each loop of this spiral equal and the same. It's depend on you to use this set curve normal and set it to Z up or not, and you can mute it by pressing M. Let me set material for this object, and I can press new material, add set material node, set material node to here. I can name it typography. Okay, and set the material to typography. I'm gonna go back to layout and set timeline to shader and make some room to here to show you what happened here. And I need to set viewport to viewport shading. And now Shift A, add image texture to here. Open. I'm going to the location of my texture and set it to my object and set the color to base color. As you see, nothing happened on my spiral object. Let me show you why. Shift A and coordinate and texture coordinate and set UV to direct to surface. You can see anything on my object. It's completely black because, let me show you what happened when I assign this material to, for example, a plane. Y to here and drag this typography material to the object. And first let me set. As you see, the texture is completely formed on this object, and if I set UV of texture coordinate as surface, you can see this form of color. It is green color for Y coordinate and a red color for X coordinate. As you see, it is X coordinate from completely red to non-red, and Y from green to non-green, and it forms my coordinate that translate to U and V. We need this coordinate to form our texture on any kind of surface. Okay, let me go back, but I don't have any UV on this object. To delete this plane, and we need to form UV of this spiral object in geometry nodes. I'm going back to geometry nodes. Let me show you. Along this spiral we have U coordinate and V coordinate that can be made by length of this curved line. But it is the way that you can set UV of any kind of curve, and I will show you how. Shift A, going to attribute and store name attribute for this, and Shift A, search for spline parameters, spline, and set the factor to value and name it U or V, no matter. Don't forget that add store name attribute exactly after spiral and same exactly after curve line to find Shift-D coordinate of these two, Shift-D curve, spiral curve and curve line, and set it to value and set it to V. I'm going back to layout and now delete X to delete this one, and Shift A going to add attribute, two attribute nodes, Shift D, one for U and one for V. Okay, and combine these two for U factor for X and V factor for Y. And now if I connect the vector to surface, we have our UV on this spiral shape. Okay, I set vector to texture vector and set the PSDF as surface. As you see, it is extended, my texture is extended along spiral surface. Now we can add a mapping node to here and set X scale to about 5 or 8 or 10 or I don't know. It is good. As you see, my texture is upside down. You can set Y position to -1 and it's okay, and set the X position is, because left to it's mirror, set to -12 and it's good. In my first video that I mentioned you, I separate my texture 2 rows of typography and kinetic motion design rows to 2 rows to set different speed for the rolling texture of each rows. Okay, we can separate V as matte and set it to greater than or less than, no matter. And if I control shift click on this node now, you see separated mask for each rows of my texture. Control shift D to copy of these nodes to here, and shift A to mix color of these 2 nodes, color B and color A, and by this mask and set this to here. And now if I rolling my texture along x-axis, you can see each row of my texture rolling separately. You can add this to here and delete this one. It is the same. Now we can set the rolling parameters by a value, drag it and let it to be combined XYZ. As you see, it's rolling upper part of texture, and you can set it to value and control it by yourself and set exactly the same. Shift D and set the value to X, set it to location, and now you can control rolling of texture by this value. But I need to this row rolling tweaks faster. You can add it by math and add it to multiply by 2. I try to organize my node group in better way. And if I change the parameters, 2 texture is rolling different speed. Okay. But as you see, the inner side of this spiral surface have again mirror texture. You can set it by this trick. Select this node and Control Shift D to here, and now Shift A here, input to geometry and add it. You need to have another mix color. As you see, if you connect back face to factor to control the factor of the mix, you can separate face and back face texture independently, and you can set the color of each one or texture of each one. You can, as you see, you can set the color or set the texture. And I am trying to set this texture. Let me switch this to socket, and now I'm going to be closer to the object, and now I can change these negative values to positive and these negative values to positive. And if I change this value, it works good. It is done for texture, and maybe you can change color of any of rows by, for example, invert color of this and Shift D to invert color of this. It is cool. It have better look now. You can set this value for rolling texture as hash frame divided by, for example, 100 and play it. Cool. You can see some distortion on our texture. We can correct it by adding subdivision surface about 2, and it's okay. I'm gonna go back to geometry nodes setup to set up some useful setting. Let's disable this, and going back, you can play with these parameters. I can set it to group input to be able to access them by geometry nodes modifier 8, and can set this one and tilt. Another thing that I can do with this geometry nodes is setting up radius. You can set the radius, exactly set curve radius, and you can set the radius of this curve, but can control it by length. As you see, I can Shift D, copy this one to here and set it to here, and it is growing up from 0 to 1 and scale it up from 0 to 1. But you can control it by Shift A, plot curve, and set it here and set this one here, and you can collapse your radius along a factor of this spiral curve. You can trim this spiral curve. Shift A, trim curve, and as you see, it works from S star to end. You can set it to Shift D and copy this one to here, and set start to here, set end to here, and it's depend on you to use curve radius or not, or use curve normal or not. It is enough for now. And now I want to show you another cool thing that you can use in this project. I can add deformer, for example, simple deformer, and it works beautiful. Let me set this, for example, hash frame divided by 100, divided by 10 or 20, I don't know. Okay, it is cool. As you see, I can deform this object by many kind of deformer. I don't know, maybe it's useful, or let me set the radius and to 1 and 1 and set the rotation to, for example, 8 and set the height to, for example, height, and now we can bend it. As you see, it's beautiful, it works, and you can taper it. I can do anything and stretch it in any axis, and you can see beautiful deforms. It works. It is cool. I think it is beautiful. Okay, at the end, let me explain my last typography project that I made for myself. It is a personal project, and show you what happened here. Let me set it to render preview, and as you see, we have our typography and some object in the scene and the light for making this gobo effect on my scene. Let me back to here, and it is my scene that have image-based lighting with an HDRI light. Let me go back, and it is my light. I use image-based lighting for fill light and use this one as key light. And let me show you how it's made. And as you see, this is a texture for this light, a noise texture that controlled by color ramp, and I set the light spread to about 4 degrees. If it's be default, you can see any effect on this wall and object. You can set it to 4, as you see. And for these objects, I use procedural material that I've made by noise, and then I set up my camera to here. As you see, it is not moved by camera because of my camera typeset to orthographic instead of perspective. It is perspective and it is orthographic. In orthographic view, you can set camera near and far to your object by changing orthographic scale. Okay, finally I have rendered my project and set this kind of typography effect to my personal project. Thank you. Please like this video if it was helpful and useful, and don't forget to follow me and subscribe my channel to find more motion graphics tips and tricks in Blender.